Thank you, Vince. Okay, moving right along, we'll right to the second panel about interfaces, the emerging tech for collaborative intelligence. And the moderator is fantastic. She is a professor in mechanical engineering at Stanford, Allison Okamura, who has a lot of qualification in this area. So please join me in welcoming Allison and her panel.
Thank you. Please take a seat. All right, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here. As someone who specializes in human-machine interfaces, thinking about the future of what those interfaces should be for mobility is a really interesting thing to do right now. If you look at the whole history of human-computer interfaces, you can start with punch cards. You can then go on to think about the mouse, and then the smartphone and the iPad and such. And these are all new ways in which we can physically interact with these devices. But this panel is meant to think more also about intelligence of interfaces. And as we have a great revolution in AI, techniques like machine learning, the ways in which these interfacings occur become deeper, they become more varied. There's also maybe more potential for distraction. And so there's a lot of questions that surround how do we have people and their mobility systems around them interact. And when we think about autonomous cars going to level 4 and level 5, what are the people doing with respect to those vehicles, both on the outside and the inside? As John put it to the panel when we discussed earlier, are we just going to be left to our own devices, that is sitting and texting on our smartphones when we're inside the car? Or can we make that experience more richer and fulfilling? And so this is the vision that this panel is here to talk about. And so we have 4 wonderful panelists. I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves. And why don't we start on the far end? We'll start with James Gowers. Please, maybe briefly, we already got a little introduction to your company, but a little bit more about yourself, please.
Sure, yeah. So my name is James Gowers. I lead business development and strategy at Perceptive Automata. My colleague Sid already introduced the company, so I'm going to do it real quick, just a quick summary. We basically do human behavior prediction for autonomous cars today. The idea is that we want to proactively predict what humans do and not wait for humans to tell the robotic system what to do, right? So it's really important so the car can much more smoothly integrate into our road environments. And it makes for just safer and smoother driving. That's it in a nutshell.
Thanks. And Todd Chernicki?
Hi, my name is Todd Chernicki. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SubPack. SubPack is a tactile audio technology that imparts high-fidelity tactile sensations directly into an occupant's body, and it does it in a directional manner. The primary use cases are enhancing the infotainment experience, but also for intuitive ADAS alerts and active wellness.
Thanks. And Gregory Renard from Xbrain?
Thank you. My name is Greg. I'm the Chief AI Officer of Xbrain, and my name is Greg, sorry. Globally, we are working on conversational platform for B2B, for cars, because it's fine, you will have autonomous driver, autonomous car, but you will need to have exchange and understand what is happening in your car. And also for customer services, call centers, but more than that, we are not only working on conversational platform, but how we can, why not, create a true collective intelligence between human and machine, because at the end of the day, we are not doing neural network, natural language, or whatever, but we are creating the new society. And how, for the first time in the history of our civilization, we will disrupt cognitive task, and how we will create the new intelligence between the human and the machine.
Okay, thank you. And Nandita Mangal from Aptiv.
Yeah, I'm Nandita. So I work at Aptiv as a product lead, where I primarily focus on developing an intelligent vehicle experience for autonomous vehicles. And Aptiv has presence both in the OEM market as well as the mobility market, where we try to serve both drivers and passengers. And my work primarily focuses on developing and understanding this human-vehicle behavior and relationship. So I work on driver monitoring, sensor fusion, but the idea is to really get deeper at the context and what's the current autonomous vehicle state to develop those really good, nuanced human-vehicle interactions.
Okay, great. Thank you, and welcome all. I want to start by thinking about humans both outside and inside the car. And so in terms of people in the environment around the car, and we saw some nice videos of that either, what do you think we, as a technology community, know and don't know about what a level 4 or 5 vehicle should be aware of in terms of that ecosystem outside the car? And maybe we'll start with James, and if anybody else would like to chime in after that.
Sure, yeah, I think today's AV technology is really good at the physics. We can detect humans, we can track them, we can predict location. If we see motion, we can identify objects, all those sort of things, which is great. But the missing piece is the piece that we as humans do really well, which is looking at other humans, pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, and making some very, very accurate predictions about what their likely intent is, for example, right? And we do this effortlessly. And it took 1 billion years to get there, right, in our brains, but we can do this effortlessly in an instant. We can look at 5 pedestrians and make safe decisions about what they're likely to do next. And today's technology just simply can't cope with that. We're working on that particular piece. We have AI that solves for it. We're taking the best of the human abilities and translating that into code, into AI, so that AVs can do the same, right? Behave in a more human-like way in traffic. It's a huge challenge, not just for AVs, but it's a huge challenge for robotics in general, right? And we'll get to more of that. But I think that's the key piece. How do we get to a human-like understanding of the world, not just a physics-based understanding of the world in all these applications?
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's interesting because you have the human side and you have people studying the human factor side in depth, and then you have the engineering side studying that in depth. But something we found when we do research studies like on-road prototyping, studies with our autonomous vehicles, is participants bring traffic psychology into the mix, which sometimes we forget, but they bring it up, right? Like, why am I being stuck behind this car? Or how's the car reacting to the pedestrians outside? And the same thing is happening inside as well, right? There's a psychology of the traffic, of the road, that we have developed now with years of driving and road use behavior. And understanding the psychology, like you put it, is very important, very crucial, and it has to happen kind of in a shared, both of the sides have to understand that psychology in depth.
I'm completely aligned with you, and we were working on how the voice and conversational system inside of the car can really interact with the driver. And you said about the psychological approach, but I want to say more emotional approach. Yep. I feel that when you are in your car, you say, oh my gosh, no, and you are in emotional behavior. And you need to understand that one to really adapt in real time how the machine will change its own behavior. And it was really fun because on many prototypes, I'm sorry I cannot go too deeper on that one, but we really try as a sequence approach to see how was your behavior of accelerating. And that one was interfering directly in the type of the scenario you can have with the machine. And to say, okay, Greg, you feel a little bit stressed regarding your traditional average style of driving. Do you want maybe to have your favorite music like Rolling Stone or whatever to unstress you? And that's type of the behavior, and it's completely incredible. I really like to say we are like Indiana Jones daily. We are discovering too much new stuff. It's incredible time for our domain and what we are doing daily.
And that's a fantastic transition to thinking about what about the interaction with the user inside the car, and what should that experience be like? And maybe Todd, you'd like to start off on that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple components, and one just to kind of continue the conversation on the autonomous side, but communication to the driver is going to become more difficult because our traditional modalities just aren't going to work as well. You may not be looking forward, and so visual alerts become ineffective. You may be asleep, and so an auditory alert may not work, or at least it may wake up the rest of the car. You may not be holding on the steering wheel, and so haptics in the steering wheel are ineffective, but we still need to communicate, either take over control or there's a forward collision alert. We believe that the seat will be the place where the primary communication will happen because it's a consistent place for that to happen in an individualized manner. But we also think that it will be the place for the infotainment system. And that really is going to be the differentiator for cars in the future from a commercial perspective, is that it's going to all be about the infotainment system. That's what you're going to be doing. It's a living room on wheels. Yeah. And you'll have lots of time, hopefully, not to just be working, but to be enjoying your life and maybe having a conference call. But that's where the differentiation will happen. And the expectation will be that each occupant will be able to do that on their own, and that they're not forced to all be involved in the same infotainment experience.
If you do have a group of people that are actually trying to be together and trying to experience that together, are there any thoughts then, rather than the individualized approach, what people could do together in vehicles and how that might change both the way the whole interior of a car might be designed, but also even how the car is controlled and how it behaves in its autonomous, along its autonomous path? Any thoughts about that? Maybe Nandita, would you like to start?
Yeah, so it's interesting because there are certain things that definitely are going to see a shift in roles and behaviors as we go towards more autonomy inside the cabin. But sometimes some things are very core to human needs and wants, right? So the need of understanding my route, the need of knowing where I am, situational awareness, these are like so core to our brains that some way or the other, we would still like to be involved and be kept up to date. So for example, we might move to a more supervisory role, right? So we're not actually driving, but we might want to be the supervisors of the route, where this automated machine is coming back to us at periodic lengths of time and giving us a status, more to say, right? So I think this shift is going to occur, and we just have to be cognizant of making sure that need is sufficed, that we're still keeping the passengers up to date on basic things like, are they aware of their upcoming destination, which is maybe 2 minutes away? They might want to get aware of their surroundings as we're pulling up into the destination, instead of just saying abruptly, you've arrived, wake up.
That's about the point at which 2 minutes is when I take away the iPads from the kids. Say, we're almost there. Put your shoes on and get ready to get out. Any other comments along those lines?
I think just in terms of the in-cabin environment and interfaces with systems, we suddenly have a lot of personal, individual preferences that suddenly come into play, right? Something that when we're driving, it's pretty standardized. We can send a voice command to do X, Y, and Z. It's pretty controlled. The moment you have a group of people sitting in the back, it could be any kind of, it's just the complexity around that is just increases tremendously, right? So there's a lot of individual preferences that need to be accounted for. I think that's going to be part of the complexity going forward for these systems. It's not going to be just one size fits all like we have more or less today. I think it's going to be interesting.
So in the discussion about being able to recognize people in the environment, of course, as you said, people are very, very good at this. There's also individuals in other cars that we sometimes gesture with, and maybe if this was discussed a little bit in the last panel, but if everything is autonomous, maybe it works out better when you start to have a mix of human drivers and autonomous cars. How do you think some of those both informational and maybe even emotional exchanges can be handled? James, go ahead.
I don't think that is a solved problem yet. I think that's something that everybody's trying to figure out, right? So we're looking at, light signals, text signals, sound. There's lots of different experimentation going on. And I don't think we really know how to handle that. A lot of the communications right now between humans is nonverbal. It's simple head movements, little nodding, that has to change most likely. Now, it's interesting, if you humanize the car, the self-driving car, you actually get very different responses than if you just have this cold robotic system that's staring at you, basically, right, at humans. So this experimentation with like big eyes, you've probably seen this online. I don't even know, was it Ford? I don't remember, but this, or maybe Aptiv even, I don't know. But they have, big eyes, at the front, they look really cute. And suddenly humans actually communicate or respond differently to these cars. But it's so early for all this. There's still a lot of experimentation going on.
And then maybe, Todd, especially as you're trying to give, in many ways, some very detailed, rich feedback to users in the car, are there ways to also sense the activity of people in the car and modify that feedback appropriately, again, either for entertainment purposes or to somehow enhance communication if it's needed?
Yes, I mean, communication and or, what Greg was mentioning, the state of the occupants. The sensor technology is getting to a place where we're detecting heart rate. You can do that through a seat, respiration, eye gaze, posture. These can all give really good indications on what's going on with a person. The interesting thing is what's the output? What do we do with that information? How are we going to act on it? And there's going to be a combination of new technologies that will enable us to do that. When it comes to communication, I think there's a role to play there as well with that technology.
On that side, one of the main mistake, I'm working in this field for 20 years, and one of the main mistake who did not allow me to be successful before was mainly to think the communication as one entity, but it's wrong. You need really to think, whatever it's the car, two humans, machine, human, you really need to think communication as A, B, and AB. And you need to have different type of tools for each one. And it's why we started to work on a framework who is vectorizing entities and to have at any time a pretty well definition about what's the state. And you can have the state of your car at any time, or the sensors. But what's the state of the human at any time regarding the psychology view, the education level, how he's thinking, because everyone is in patterns. And you can extract and infer some behavior from people. And when you know both pretty well, A and B, you can think about the communication with AB and work on that one. And it's how we are adapting in real time the conversation between the human and machine, and to have a lot of, and it's really fun today to see some of our customers using in call center or cars system, and when the system can readapt in real time, because he don't understand, he's creating disambiguation, try to infer the emotion, decide to, okay, the machine cannot continue, the machine will switch in real time to another human because it is not possible to continue as a machine. And it's when you think like that, you can really create, I would say, no more the technical approach, but the user experience. It's really how we move from technical approach to the wow experience, as I like to say, the elegance approach. Mm-hmm. It's really like you are at the Ritz, a big restaurant, and you want to have an experience. And everything around us is about experience and emotion. Mm-hmm. And we need to think like that. And it's very hard for us because I'm a mad guy. Globally, my job is no emotion. And you need in the same time to bring a lot of emotion inside of your system.
So can I dig a little bit more into technically how you think that problem can be solved? Machine learning on millions of images of cats on the internet is one thing. Even machine learning of a robot that has to physically move around the environment is much more difficult because of how we're limited by the physical timescales of those activities. And then now you think about somehow learning about humans and adapting to those humans. People are so different. They're different cultures, different individuals, gender, age. All of these things might come into play. And how much of that do you think we can sort of assume a priori, or do we have to learn from a specific individual? Maybe I'll ask Greg to take that first, and then maybe Nandita, if you'd like to follow up.
I think that, okay, we all think that we are individual, we are not the same one, completely different. No way, no. What we saw online with 1,000 users on the system, we saw patterns arriving. And you think that because you are thinking in a 3D dimension, but the machine is thinking hundreds and more dimensions. And at this level, we can really attach you at a time to a cluster, a group, and we can infer some behavior. And we can try to work on that one. But where I'm completely aligned with you, it's not a solved problem for the moment. There is a lot of startups working by different ways to try to fix, when I say fix, to solve, to crack the problem. And on our side, we are working on language. Because of our origin focus on the language, we really try from the language to infer a lot of information, to have the image of the person and try to reinject in the right cluster and infer behavior that we can use in the user experience. And it's still a work in progress, but when I'm seeing that we deployed 6 to 8 months ago for the first time an emotional AI in call centers to support customers, it's really impressive to see that the machine can follow in real time the quality of the conversation based on the answers of the machine, globally the accuracy, and in the same time to have an evaluation with not only sentimentalism, but really more than that. When you're arriving in a room, you can understand what's the mood globally in the room, and how we can have a machine to understand this type of approach. It's what we try to have at this first level, but it seems to work pretty well. Yeah.
I think the approach, going back to what Greg initially mentioned, was that it's both technology and it's both approach as well. We can go at it with data, very quant-heavy approach, but we can also apply a very qualitative approach. So on the qualitative side, for example, an approach could be to understand how, say, driver and passengers interact, how their conversations are in the cabin, right? And use that as a model to really understand what is it that the driver and passengers are really thinking about, what is it that they're trying to understand about the situation as we're going on this route. So as an example, in a previous research study, what we did was, instead of focusing a lot of effort in actually making the NLP and the technology work, we Wizard of Oz'd the whole thing, meaning that we told participants, this car is super smart. Hey, don't you see all the sensors around? It's smart. So, so we're like, we told our participants, like, go ahead and ask it any question you want. And we were trying to understand, well, we know how drivers and passengers converse. Do we see those patterns emerge when they're trying to communicate with a vehicle? And initially, we would see the responses. Participants would ask, like, they would have their fixed mindset, right? Like, they would limit themselves to queries, right? Like, well, can you take me to this destination? What is the weather? What is the weather up in SF? But once they scratched the surface, we saw that their questions became much more intelligent, that they saw the vehicle actually responding to much more sophisticated answers. In the back, a researcher was typing the answers. We never told the participants that, but their questions became much more context aware, right? As if they would ask a passenger, or a driver, like, why did I just stop right now? Or why am I slowing down? Right? Very context-aware questions. And the more we answered those questions, the participants saw that the vehicle was very emotionally intelligent, is how they labeled it. And I think those patterns helped us study really as to what were the participants really trying to get at, how were they forming the mental models of this autonomous vehicle. And I think both approaches are actually necessary. Both approaches of analyzing the data at depth and the approach of really modeling the human behavior and trying to understand how that would work in this human-machine cognitive system together. They're both very necessary approaches.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm wondering, in the context of riding in a car where you may be doing some sort of task other than driving or looking out the window, the physical, a lot of the interaction is sort of physical in nature, as I'm sure Todd is well aware. There are concerns about car sickness. There are concerns that there should be more sort of natural and intuitive interactions that don't require the cognitive load that vision or even voice exchanges would require. And so what I'm wondering for this panel is, what are the big challenges to having a sort of natural physical experience, one that's not uncomfortable in a car that may drive differently from what you're used to with a human driver, or just because you're looking down or you're not paying attention to the environment? Todd, would you like to start with that one?
Sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things there is personalization and allowing people to customize the experience for themselves. We all require different types of feedback depending on a number of factors. It can be basic, such as what clothes we're wearing or how we're feeling that day, or just how sensitive we are, how stressed we are. But being able to both detect those things and allow the person to customize the experience for themselves, it will make a big difference. But there is a real requirement, I think, for that haptic feedback, for that visceral sensation that is progressively becoming less prevalent in the vehicle with electrification and autonomy. We need that feedback to know what's going on. We're less connected to the car. We're going to need to reintroduce something to connect us better, to understand what's going on, to know that the action that we've taken has had the right effect. Is the road, does it feel the right way? But again, it's a very individualized thing, and we're going to need to be able to do that for people as we implement these types of features.
What do you think people want in that context?
Well, fundamentally, people want to feel good, and that it depends on everyone as personal taste. But having a physical connection to the car, it does create a bond. To be honest, it helps you empathize with the vehicle. It draws an emotional connection to it, but also that has an impact on your emotional connection to the brand. And so, from a commercial perspective, it's an important thing for the OEMs to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and that's clearly the point. I think is the connection to the brand at the end of the day. And it's why conversational platform will be really the connection to conversational commerce. And it's why we are, in our case, we are deploying our technology for customer services. And for us, the car is no more an extension of the phone or the email or whatever, because tomorrow you want to speak with your brand, you want to exchange. And the car industry will be completely changed with the autonomous driving. And it's how you will completely change the usage of services, tasks, or anything, and through conversational at each time. And it's very, very important to don't think only about the interaction with the vehicle, but the usage of new type of services inside of your car. Exactly as you want to use a service with a call center or anything else, you will want to consume to purchase, to exchange directly inside of your car. As you said, it's a new room when you will leave, and people just want to go to the destination. And the good thing is exactly as I'm using the TGV in France. I'm not taking care. I just want to work. I'm sitting. I want to have something to drink, have a good experience, and be on time at my destination.
I think we're going to see a sort of phasing of these technologies, right? So the beginning is all about safety and comfort. And then we start layering more things on top of that. But motion sickness, I think, is going to be a big potential challenge. And I think that's the number one. If we have robotaxi services launching now in the coming years, and people, basically 50% of people are motion sick, we're going to have a problem, right? There's a public acceptance issue, and so just designing, seats and visuals and feedback and communications to help alleviate that. We're also working on smell, for example. We're trying to use, not we as a company, but the industry, smell to try and calm nerves and reduce motion sickness. So there's very interesting experiments going on in that, but that's an important part. And then later we get to all the fun stuff, right, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very important part, that we're so focused on the reward that we forget we're so focused on the fun stuff, but the foundational layers that we have to, there's no way to skip them, so to speak, that we have to kind of go through them as we go through different levels of society accepting autonomy, technology and autonomy, sensors, LiDARs, getting better at detection, different decision making becoming more nuanced. There's these phases, and till we're not going to sit back and sleep, perhaps not all of us, till we get through these big foundation leaps in autonomy. And another point is like speed and mobility, right? Like we embody the experience of speed and mobility of a car even now, as we're, say, passengers in back of a Lyft or Uber. We know when the car is slowing down. We have developed all these mechanisms to keep up without looking up. So, and things like motion sickness, all of these are still going to be very much at play. So, and they very much need to be addressed in those foundational levels first.
Great. So I think now is a good time to take some questions from the audience. Feel free to direct them to the panel as a whole or to someone specific. And we have our runners with the microphones. So please raise your hand if you have a question. Yes, in front. And even if you've done so already, please introduce yourself in case there are people that
Hi,
came in.
me again. I'm Kristen Johnson-Oyo. I'm a transportation and environmental planner at Jacobs Engineering. I was hoping you could talk about the potential applications of AI and autonomous driving for transit and rail, and also for freight. I'm just thinking about, in terms of transit, sort of the lost time in, the bus pulling over to someone that they think wants to get on and they don't, and everybody loses a minute, and how that kind of adds on as you're going down the line. And also thinking about some other issues in terms of different users, maybe with wheelchair users and things like that, and that kind of extra time, and if there was some capabilities to kind of think through that with AI and different technologies. And I think with freight, there's already been some ideas about how to kind of address that from Elon Musk and Tesla and all those folks. But I was just wondering if we could talk about some of those options as well.
Right, that's a terrific question. So intentional interactions that might make the whole system work better with the users.
Yeah, because there's a lot in sort of the personal vehicle realm, but I'm wondering how it will work in other areas.
Yeah, terrific. Yes, we've mostly been talking about personal vehicles, I think. So who would like to take that?
That's a big question. It's complex, right? Because we're dealing with all these edge cases, right? And if you have a fixed, like a autonomous car or robotaxi, it's probably slightly easier than if we have autonomous train or truck, especially train, for example. If there's nobody there to help humans get in and out, for example, or deal with edge cases, it's going to be a problem. And I think removing a human completely, might not be the solution in terms of, driving, yes, or, transporting, but you could easily see how we might focus more on service provision, right? So you have human beings as part of the service helping in those cases, right? And sort of taking care of these edge cases. And then there's certain ways that communications could happen, right, between the system and the humans. So I think that is a very good question. I don't think anybody has the answer to exactly how that will roll out. But I think instead of assuming that we're going to lose, jobs and, it's going to drive itself, we don't need humans, I think the role of humans will shift. And I think this is what, in general, right, AI is doing, right? It's shifting the value that humans deliver towards what humans are really good at, right? So if I'm providing a service to a elderly person who's trying to get onto the bus or the train, that's much more valuable than just sitting there driving the train, right? So I think it's shifting, and I think this is an example of that. But it's a complex topic. That's my 2 cents on that one. But,
Yeah, I completely agree with James because I recently read a book by David Mandel from MIT, and he said that there are no autonomous systems. There are only really good human-machine cognitive systems. And if you look back in history, in like space, sea, air travel, there's no autonomous system. There's always human-machine collaboration in different shifted roles playing in action. So there's this myth of autonomy almost, right? That autonomous train or autonomous truck is just going to go from point A and point B and no human intervention, no need for HMI. But actually that's just a myth that is been there for a while, and humans are not going to go out of the picture. They're just going to shift the way they help this ecosystem. So with freight, for example, there's platooning efforts where you're platooning a lot of trucks together, but it's the truck drivers who are supervising at the end of the day, right? They're making sure, because truck drivers do bring a lot of expertise into the matter, of this different level of awareness on the road. And so in platooning efforts, specifically, for example, you'll have truck drivers looking at the chaining and unchaining of a platoon to see if everything's going well or not, and how best to platoon and what conditions to platoon into. So I think these use cases of human-machine together working is going to continue for a very long time. At least history has told us that.
And it's exactly the point of collective intelligence. Yeah. And Kay Foley explained that pretty well in the TEDx that he just made, and I think he was in the Bewa some days ago. But we really need to find for each new transformation of jobs, find what's the right balance between the cognitive approach from the machine and cognitive capacities and skills from the human. And we will still have all the jobs, but the part of the machine will be bigger. And for that one, I think it's very important to think as writing some rules to how we can do that. Exactly as we've got rules to drive on the road. And we need to have the same one, be sure that we can include everyone inside of this new type of technology. With the French community on deep learning, we wrote the Alberton Turing Horse. It's like guide rules to propose to our colleague how to apply our knowledge, be sure that we can provide some guidance, how to deploy, how to apply that in any jobs and any domain, to really try to create a collective intelligence who includes everyone. Because if you are letting the machine doing that, we will just have a few people with a lot of technology, a lot of money, and the rest of us without. And we saw that mainly in France, what is surviving when you got that one. You've got the revolution. It's why we need to be very careful.
Great. We've gone from the efficiency of public transportation systems to the future of work, all in one answer. Any other questions? Yeah, we have one up front here.
Okay, my name is Don. I'm from Hyundai Motor Group, and I'm the mobility UX lead in the future mobility development team. So really fascinating discussion, and my question kind of follows the question before. So the human-machine interaction is always a two-way interaction, but it seems what we focus on is a lot how can we make machines understand humans or imitate humans or do what humans do, right? But I think another critical question is actually how can we change how humans have a prior about machines or expect what machines do? Because that might be different depending on culture, depending on person, gender, many factors, right? So however the technology is great, how people will actually expect them to work. Maybe people just want machines to be machines, right? So how do you deal with this kind of human side of interaction? And what do you think is the future? How can you influence that part?
So I think you need to be sitting here on this panel, given your background.
Asking, happily.
No, I think you know the answer. I don't know, I'm going to leave this.
You want to try? Or? Your question is very huge, and it's completely a problem. We are all working on it, and we really need to. I don't want to come back on the work, but more on the human-machine collaboration. And I think it's really A, B, and AB. We need to work on all the elements, and we need to help the machine to come more closer to the human, but also the human come more closer to the machine. But we saw some bad effect, like what start of this year with social network, and that you can maybe sometimes use to influence too much people. And we really need, I think, working on education. Here in the Bay Area is very good because kids at school got really early the connection with the machine, try to understand how the machine is working, because at the end of the day, the silicium brain is definitely not working as the human brain. But you can have the same behavior at the end, driving a car. And I'm using my Tesla, and it's completely unbelievable. 80% of my driving time is my car. It's completely incredible. And by experience, you understand better when I'm completely confident with my car, that I'm sure that she will really do a very good job. And it's fun because I'm saying each time she, but it's an object at the end of the day. But what you will arrive when you will be in your car, and that your car will provide you emotional user experience at high level. I think as we need to understand other humans, we will understand machine step by steps, and how to work. I'm sorry, I'm coming back. Collective intelligence, the new collective intelligence.
Can I just
yes,
on this?
Please.
So I actually, I think, if we look at the long arc, of time and in aggregate, I think we need to make sure that machines adapt to humans and not the other way around, right? So I think that fundamentally, it just simply won't work otherwise, right? I mean, in the autonomous space, there was a big issue maybe 6 months ago. There was a debate that there was a very prominent AI person who said, you know what, humans need to adapt to AVs. They should know it's an AV. They should step aside. We should get rid of the pedestrians. Right? I mean, I'm paraphrasing, right? But that's just not gonna be acceptable. There was a huge, problem with that kind of perspective. And if we want robotic systems and AI to fit into a human-dominated environment to help us, be it in medicine, be it on the roads, be it in firefighting, right? We need to make sure that they fit into our world and not the other way around. And I think that's where the onus should be. There might be cases where a bit of a brute force approach to retrain humans and what the expectations should be might well be valid for maybe safety reasons or other reasons. But I think in general, my view is it has to be AI and robotic systems adapting to the human world. And I think then it will find adoption, right? And it's to do with emotion. It's to do with just even like, say, Boston Dynamics, those robots, when you look at those things running around, 90% of people get scared. It looks spooky, right, these things. So if we humanize them and deal with them differently and present them differently, suddenly people feel more comfortable over time. And so anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but I think it's very important. That's my view. But again, I think you should be up here.
Thanks for that comment. Point well taken. So I just want to end with a very fast lightning round, if you can keep your answers as concise as possible. Since all of you are working with companies that are creating amazing technology, what is the sort of interface technology of the future that most excites you? And maybe you can also quickly comment on how far in the future you think that technology will come to be a product. And I'll start with James and come down.
It's interesting. From my perspective, what excites me is this sort of proactive nature of AI, and then through appropriate interfaces being able to interpret and discern what humans want before they articulate it, right? So I think that would be the more we can listen to, for example, conversations, AI can listen to conversations or read body language proactively, and then make adjustments to, let's say, sound, temperature, behavior of the car or whatever, right? It could be all sorts of stuff. The more it does that proactively, I think the better. And products, obviously, we have Alexa and all those kind of applications that are now available in a home environment. Those are the devices that will become more proactive as they listen in and they detect human behavior and they can read human behavior in a similar way that we read human behavior on the road now, for AI. So I think that's where we're going to see products change going forward.
Todd?
Cool. Yeah, I did two things that I'm excited about. One is I do think the car will be the primary place for media consumption for many of us. And I'm excited for the day where I can have that and the person sitting next to me can have, if I have a girlfriend that has a bad taste in music, that doesn't affect my media experience. So I'm excited for that day, and I think that it's maybe about 2 years out until we see that. But I also think that we should expect that we feel better getting out of the car than we did getting in. And so I'm excited to see where the technology evolves in that space, because I think consumers will demand it, and the technology is there to start to make it happen.
Great. Yeah, Greg.
I like your idea that my car is the new theater, because I don't have time to go to theater. That would be great with my kids. I would say globally proactive, collaborative, emotional. I think it's many the point, and when you are thinking like that, you get very good movie like Her, who maybe represent type of the future we will have, thanks to B2C platform who are already there, and we will have that in any different type of job. But it's really the three main points: proactive, collaborative, emotional.
Okay, thank you, and Nandita.
Wow, such future. It's a good future. But I think what really excites me is a very specific use case where it's a use case of shared control in action, where we're stopping to think about handoff from, say, autonomous to manual mode in our vehicles as a this versus that control. And it's more of a use case in the future where our cars don't just abruptly stop, and they actually assist us as we try to do an action like manually taking control of the car. And a future where it's a shared assistive nature between the human and vehicle is where I'm really excited about, where we actually go beyond a boundary that separates us, but more like, let's do this together. Let's not crash together. So.
Excellent. That's a good theme. Not crash together. All right. With that, I'd like to thank all the panelists for their insights.
Yeah. Thank you.